What do we learn from the Beatles Part 2? Yesterday, in Part 1, we looked at Beatles songs that incorporated the first, the fourth, the fifth and the sixth chords of the scale. So many popular songs are made up of them 4 chords. And then we looked at how to alter them to make things more interesting. In this, we're going to look at walk-ups, cycles and also the minor fourth. And a lot of the comments that I got was talking about how the Beatles used a minor fourth, which is interesting, which we'll talk about shortly. Now, in a case like a song like A Day in the Life from the Sgt. Pepper's album, which I'll play through. Now that's in G. The chords available to us in G are G, A minor, B minor, C, D and E minor. So a song like this is incorporating other chords that aren't just following the first, fourth, fifth and sixth. It's going from the G to the B minor, which is a third, E minor, which is the sixth, then changing it to E minor 7, to a C, which is the fourth. An interesting thing the Beatles do is change the bass note, so it's a C, it turns to a C/B. And then we could go to the A minor, which is the second, but instead of doing an A minor, he decides to do an A suspended 2, which kind of makes the song, it gives it that bit of interest. So he's incorporated different chords from the key, using their minor chords out of the key. If we come across a song like Across the Universe, which is in D, I think the capitals on the second, but for the purposes of this, we're going to do it in D. Now in D, the chords available are D, E minor, F sharp minor, G, A, B minor, which is the sixth. So I want to play that through. Go through again. Which is an interesting chord progression. Going from the D, going to a B minor, which is the sixth, so your relative minor key, it's B minor. Going to F sharp minor, which is the third. Going down to E minor 7, second, to an A7, which is derived from the fifth, which is A. Going back to D, B minor, F sharp minor, A minor 7, and then instead of going to the G, which would be the fourth, it changes to a G minor, which gives it that nice feel, and that's something we'll come across, that's your minor fourth. So when you think the chorus then goes G, nothing's gonna change my world. So the G minor gives it that off, and you find it in so many Beatles songs, but we'll come across that shortly. Now, another thing that the article that I talked about yesterday had in is talking about like a climb, where we can go from the first to the minor second, the minor third and the fourth. If we take something like the key of C, and we C, D minor, E minor, F, it's got a nice feel to it. We see it with songs like If I Fell on the lyric, Give My Love, If I Give My Love, we've got D, E minor, F sharp minor, so we've got D, E, F sharp. So very melodic, and it's got that climb. On I'm Only Sleeping, we go from a G flat on the, I think it's on the lyric, Please Don't Wake Me. We're going from a G flat to an A flat minor to a B flat minor, so we're going G, A, B in the sequence. Again, it's got a nice feel about it, so we can use that when songwriting. This is a lot of the reason why to older people modern songs are of kind of no interest. Because when you look back at these older songs, there's so much skill gone into writing them that when you look at a lot of modern songs, there doesn't seem to be anything new or inventive about them. When you start delving into stuff like the Beatles, you start seeing how interesting they are. Somebody pointed out yesterday in a comment about Queen songs written by Freddie Mercury are even more unusual or interesting. So this is like what we're looking at is like the basis of when it all. Beatles weren't the first people to do this, but they're kind of what made it really popular and set the whole pop music, made it a lot more complex in the songwriting ability. Now the next thing, this article that we discussed, the links in the description of this article that I found in the Guitar Magazine, is this idea of going up in fourths. If you take a song like Cant Buy Me Love, which is quite an early Beatles song, and the Beatles, we tend to think of their complexity as developing later on in their career, and we don't tend to think of it as in the early days. But if you look at something like Cant Buy Me Love, which starts off, Can't buy me love, love, can't buy me love. It's going from an E minor to an A. So if we count up E, F, G, A, it then does it again, E, F, G, A, and then A, B, C, D minor, and then D, E, F, G. So it's going up in fourths, which is quite a clever way of doing it. If we think of the actual song itself, which is on C7, F7 and G7, which is a first, fourth, fifth chord progression. It's got that, I've played that all wrong I know, but it's got that first, fourth, fifth, but the intro makes it a lot more interesting. We then come to this minor fourth, which we looked at briefly with Across the Universe. If you take a song like She Loves You, very early song by the Beatles, I'll play the verse through. You think you've lost your love, well I saw her yesterday, it's you she's thinking of, and she told me what to say. So she loves you, and you know that can be bad. She loves you, and you know you should be glad. Again, if we look at this song, G, going to the 6th, the V minor 7, down to the B minor, which is the 3rd, going to the 5th, which is the D. We're going to go through that again. So straight away we see how the Beatles were getting away from the 1st, 4th, 5th in the 6th chord progression. And then as she loves you, and know that can be A minor bad. Now we go to a C minor, and this is kind of the root of the whole song. Loves you, and you know that can be glad. Ooh, I can't get that high. Should be going to C when you think G, A, B, C. So C is the 4th, but we've changed it to a minor. And that kind of what the whole song hangs on, that little bit, which makes it so interesting. The Beatles did that with so many different songs. If you take a look at Norway Man, which is in the key of E, I think if you take it as a 1st, 4th, 5th song, E, F, G, A and B. So E, A and B are your 1st, 4th and 5th. So it starts off on an E. He's a real B, nowhere man, A, sitting in his E, nowhere land. Going to A, making all his, and then drops to A minor, nowhere plans for A, nobody. So he's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. And that's what makes the song more than just a first, fourth, fifth progression. We see it on the same album of Rubber Soul, in My Life. I'll play that through. There are places I remember all my life. I've seen it. So A. So we're in the key of A. The chords available are, when you think of it's first, fourth, fifth, A, B, C, D is the fourth, E is the fifth, and F sharp minor is the sixth. So it's going A, F sharp minor, there's an A7 / G, the D, which is the fourth, drops down to D minor, then to A. So that's your minor fourth, which is an interesting way of doing it. We see it in a lot of popular songs. If you think Oasis, who were heavily influenced by the Beatles. As you said, the brains I had went to my head. Stand beside the fireplace, take that look from off your face, 'cause you ain't never gonna burn my heart out. Don't Look Back in Anger, in the key of C. C, D, E, F is the fourth. So F, so start a revolution. So F, F minor, C, going to G. So when you look at that, they're heavily influenced there. Now, one of the interesting ones of the Beatles, where we see this in the case of D to D minor, is in the case of Norwegian Wood. Capo's on the second fret, so technically it's in E, but for the purposes of this video, again, we're going to be in D. Now this is interesting because this is actually in Mixolydian. Now if you're thinking that's really complicated, all that is we're in the key of G and we are starting on the fifth. So G, A, B, C, D. So that is actually starting on the fifth. But when after that it changes from the D to a D minor, so it goes then it goes to that. Interesting, somebody pointed out many years ago that it was going from Mixolydian to D minor Aeolian, which the Beatles were kind of completely unaware of. So what's really interesting in this case is the Beatles were experimenting with this, and yet they had a limited amount of like theoretical knowledge of knowing what everything was. There is a school of thought which makes you think that you're better at writing songs when you don't know all the theory, because sometimes when you know that much theory it can become formulated and you can almost use formulas for being able to write songs. And you could argue, there's many different opinions, you could argue that you write better songs when you don't know the theory and you're doing it all by ear and discovering things. But that's part 2 of what we learned from the Beatles. Tomorrow we'll be looking at part 3. And we'll be looking at some interesting little tips and tricks of what the Beatles used. So as always, thank you for watching.